Welcome to another video on the Nancy Drew Times. Today we're diving into the questions, why do we love to replay the Nancy Drew games? Why do we love to watch replays of other people playing the Nancy Drew games? Where does that come from? Why? The answers are simple, but I wanted to use psychology and science to dive a bit deeper into those answers. Thanks for joining, and let's get started. So as most of you know, the Nancy Drew games by Her Interactive began hitting the market in the late 90s. The 90s, what a time to be alive. And since their beginning, there have been numerous more Nancy Drew games released through the years with huge developments and changes. In the early years, it was quite common to see cultural references and items related to the era of that time. Chunky computers, pagers, old telephones, fax machines, briefcases. These games screamed late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, Nancy didn't even have a cell phone until way later. And all the jokes about caller ID?
Nancy, how's it going?
Hey, Bess. How'd you know it was me?
Telepathy, of course. Just another of my many talents. You are so full of it. She got caller ID, Nancy.
Yeah. But my point to these references is that it all brings the players back to a time. And maybe the word that could best describe where I'm going is nostalgia. We hear this word often used nowadays, but where does that fit into our answer? According to a study performed in 2012, nostalgia feelings and thoughts make our bodies feel warmer. In this study, they asked a group of people to record their nostalgic thoughts over 30 days and found that participants were actually more nostalgic on colder days. They also placed individuals in 3 different rooms: cold, room temp, and a hot room. Those in the colder room felt more nostalgic feelings or thoughts. This is probably why most people associate colder months or colder holidays with really warm, happy feelings. Like the study states, when our minds explore nostalgic thoughts, we're actually warming our bodies, which is why we crave nostalgic feelings at times. It's to wistfully wish to experience the same feelings from the past again. Which brings us back to the Nancy Drew games. So why do we like to replay these games? Well, for starters, the nostalgic feelings we get from playing them. When we replay a game from our past, our bodies and brains are warming themselves up in a way. We are reliving the magic of experiencing the game all over again. It's literally making us happy. But it's not just the replay value of nostalgia that brings us warmth. It's also the era of game in which we play. Remember earlier when we discussed the type of items and cultural references you may find in games? Let's break that aspect down. Back in March, when I was planning for this video, I asked several questions for the use of data in this video, and with over 500 responses, it definitely confirmed a little bit of the answers I was looking for. Over half of the voters responded to a question that they were born in the 90s decade, and another big portion saying they were born between 1985 and 1989. It's important to note this because it tells us that a big group of those that love these games and replay them often probably find a lot of nostalgia in the earlier games that are associated with their younger years of growing up. For example, if you were born in these years, you probably remember specific items that stick out to you and remind you of a certain time. So for me, big chunky computers remind me of my childhood, and thus, seeing them in Secrets Can Kill or floppy disks and CDs in Secret of Scarlet Hand remind me of the days when I was a kid. I feel warm, I'm reminded of my childhood, it's nostalgic. And no doubt that's what a lot of other players feel too. Probably without consciously thinking of this, but while playing the game, they're getting random bursts of warmth and happiness as their brain subtly remembers items of their past. This concept I feel like is confirmed as I play a newer, more modern Nancy Drew game, like Captive Curse. I like the game, but I'm not getting those same warm feelings like I am with games 1 through 17-ish. I say ish because that line is more blurred from player to player on where the game stopped feeling nostalgic. For me, the more modernized the games became, the less nostalgic they were. And that in itself is a tricky topic because when do things become nostalgic? I'm not sure. But there is something in those earlier games that speaks a different tone. And maybe the reason is because the first third of the series is where most of the voters in the poll stated they played their first game. Games 1 through 14 ranked number 1 for everyone's not only favorite games, but games that they were introduced into the series with. Actually, it's within games 1 through 14 that everyone states the peak of popularity of Nancy Drew games happened, around Shadow Ranch, Curse of Blackmore Manor, Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon era, with a respectable surge again around Shadow at Water's Edge. But what struck me is that 60% of players said they were introduced into the gaming series by a friend or family member, and that 70% of players play or do play with a friend or family member. The connection of nostalgia is not only from replay and cultural reference, but most importantly, there's a link of family and friendship bond too. Those three things combined is why we find ourselves seeking warmth again. It's exactly why I created such a channel, to relive and re-experience the joy of playing for the first time. And that is why these games speak such volume to so many, and hopefully more to come. Thanks again for watching my analysis on nostalgic Nancy Drew games. I hope you enjoyed, and here's to the next.